The invitation to the Harrison family's annual charity gala arrived in a thick cream envelope, addressed in my Aunt Katherine's perfect calligraphy. Inside was a handwritten note that made my blood boil. "Emma dear, given your financial situation, perhaps it's best you sit this one out. The Crystal Ballroom has certain standards to maintain." I sat in my modest office, surrounded by property documents worth more than my entire family's net worth combined, and laughed. If they only knew that their precious venue was about to become mine. The Harrison family had always been obsessed with appearances. Old money, old traditions, old prejudices. My mother had been the black sheep, marrying a common architect and choosing love over status. When she and Dad died in a car accident 10 years ago, leaving 16-year-old me to fend for myself, the family's true colors showed. "We'll help, of course," Aunt Katherine had said, examining her manicured nails. "But you'll need to understand your place. The Harrison name carries certain expectations." Their help meant a tiny monthly allowance that barely covered groceries, while my cousins enjoyed trust funds worth millions. But what they didn't know was that Dad had left me something far more valuable than money. He taught me everything he knew about real estate development and property investment. By 18, I'd turned that knowledge and my modest inheritance into my first property purchase. By 21, I owned 3 struggling buildings that I'd transformed into profitable ventures. Now at 26, my real estate portfolio was worth over $200 million, all carefully hidden behind shell companies and investment trusts. Not that my family knew any of this. To them, I was still poor Emma, the charity case cousin who worked as a lowly property manager. They had no idea that while they were flaunting their inherited wealth, I was quietly building an empire. My phone buzzed with a text from my cousin Sophia. "Heard Mom broke the news about the gala. Don't worry, we'll send pics." Face blowing a kiss. I set my phone down and turned to my computer, where the final contract for the Crystal Ballroom acquisition was waiting for my signature. The venue had been struggling financially for months, its old-world charm not quite enough to justify its outdated facilities. I'd spent 6 months negotiating the purchase through one of my shell companies. The timing couldn't have been more perfect. "Ms. Harrison?" My assistant Alice knocked softly. "The Crystal Ballroom's board just approved the sale. You can sign whenever you're ready." I smiled, thinking of my family's upcoming gala. "Let's make it official." The contract was signed digitally, ownership transferred with a few clicks. Just like that, I own the most prestigious venue in the city. The same venue that had supposedly deemed me too poor to attend its events. "Should I start the renovation plans?" Alice asked, knowing my usual strategy of modernizing acquired properties. "Not yet," I replied. "We have a gala to deal with first." The next day I decided to pay Aunt Katherine a visit. She lived in one of those massive Victorian mansions that practically screamed old money, though I knew from my industry connections that she was 3 months behind on her property taxes. The maid, because of course Aunt Katherine still employed house staff, showed me into the formal sitting room. Everything was perfectly arranged, perfectly traditional, perfectly superficial. "Emma." Aunt Katherine swept in, looking surprised and slightly annoyed. "What are you doing here? If this is about the gala." "Actually," I settled into an antique armchair, "I'm here about the Crystal Ballroom." She brightened. "Oh yes, isn't it magnificent? The perfect venue for our caliber of event. Though I suppose you wouldn't be familiar." "I'm quite familiar with it," I cut in smoothly. "In fact, I've been reviewing all its bookings. Including yours." She frowned. "Reviewing? What do you mean?" "Well, as the venue's new owner, I like to be thorough." The silence that followed was delicious. Aunt Katherine's face went through a series of expressions: confusion, disbelief, horror. "New owner," she finally managed. "As of yesterday," I confirmed. "The board approved the sale. Quite a bargain, really. The place needs significant updating." But that's impossible. You can't afford to buy a multi-million-dollar historic venue?" I raised an eyebrow. "The same way I couldn't afford to attend your gala?" She sank into a chair, her perfect posture crumbling. "I don't understand." "No," I agreed, standing up. "You never did. None of you ever tried to understand that success isn't about which family you're born into. It's about what you build yourself." "The gala," she whispered. "We've already sent the invitations." "Yes, about that." I pulled an envelope from my bag, the same cream-colored one she'd sent me. I'm afraid we'll have to cancel your booking. The venue has certain standards to maintain. You can't, she burst out. The Harrison family has hosted events there for generations. We're institution members. We're institution members, I corrected her. The membership program is being restructured. We're focusing on a more diverse, merit-based clientele. This is revenge, she accused. For the invitation for 10 years of condescension? For treating me like a charity case while I built something more valuable than your entire family's inheritance. I smiled. No, Aunt Katherine. This is business. Pure and simple. I reached the door before turning back. Oh, and you might want to take care of those property tax issues. I hear the city is cracking down on delinquent payments. Her sharp intake of breath told me she hadn't known I was aware of her financial troubles. How did you? I'm in real estate, remember? The lowly property manager you all look down on? It's amazing what you learn in this business. I paused. For instance, I know about the second mortgage on this house. And the credit card debt. And the fact that this year's gala was supposed to attract new investors for Uncle Robert's failing hedge fund. She sat there, speechless as her carefully maintained facade crumbled. The funny thing about old money, I continued, is that it eventually runs out if you don't know how to make new money. Something to think about. As I drove away from Aunt Katherine's mansion, my phone started buzzing with messages from various family members. Word was spreading fast. Sophia, OMG, is it true? You can't cancel our gala. Uncle Robert, let's discuss this reasonably. Perhaps we can reach an arrangement. Cousin William, this is absolutely unacceptable. Do you know who we are? I ignored them all, focusing instead on the renovation plans I'd been developing for the Crystal Ballroom. The venue had amazing potential. It just needed someone with vision to unlock it. Someone who understood that true luxury wasn't about excluding people, but about creating something extraordinary that brought people together. My father had taught me that. While designing buildings, he'd always focused on how spaces could unite communities, not divide them. That was the legacy I wanted to build, not the Harrison family's outdated elitism. But first, I had a cancellation to formalize. The official cancellation notice went out the next morning. Within hours, my office was flooded with calls from increasingly desperate family members. The governor is attending. Uncle Robert shouted into my voicemail. Do you have any idea what this makes us look like? I did, actually. My sources had already confirmed that the governor had declined weeks ago, but the Harrisons had kept promoting his attendance to attract donors. Another lie in their carefully constructed facade. By afternoon, they'd escalated to showing up at my office unannounced. I watched through security cameras as Sophia and William argued with my front desk staff, waving their platinum cards and dropping the Harrison name like it could still open doors. Should I send them up? Alice asked, amusement in her voice. No, I replied, reviewing the Crystal Ballroom's books. But make sure security gets good footage of their tantrum. We might need it later. The venue's financial records told an interesting story. Years of mismanagement under the old board, inflated prices for exclusive members like my family, while genuine community events were turned away. All that was about to change. My phone buzzed with a text from my grandmother, the only family member who'd shown me kindness after my parents' death. They're all at Katherine's house having an emergency family meeting. Thought you should know. I smiled. Want to get coffee, Gran? I have something to show you. An hour later, I gave my grandmother a private tour of the Crystal Ballroom. She walked through the grand space slowly, touching the ornate columns, looking up at the chandeliers. Your father always loved this place, she said quietly. He used to say it was wasted on people who only saw its surface beauty. He was right. I showed her my renovation plans. Look what it could be. Her eyes widened as she studied the drawings. The preserved historic details blended with modern amenities. Flexible spaces that could host both black tie galas and community events. A rooftop garden open to the public. This is what Dad would have done, I explained. Make it beautiful and accessible. Not exclusive and empty. They'll never forgive you, she warned, but her eyes were proud. They'll never forgive me anyway. Might as well give them a real reason. Just then my phone buzzed with an alert. The family meeting had moved from Aunt Catherine's house to the Crystal Ballroom's front steps. They were demanding to speak with management. Want to watch the show, Gran? She linked her arm through mine. Wouldn't miss it. We watched on the security feed as my entire family, dressed in their designer best, created a scene outside. Aunt Catherine was threatening legal action. Uncle Robert was dropping names of his powerful friends. My cousins were filming everything on their phones, probably planning to shame the venue on social media. Time to end this, I said, heading for the elevator. I stepped out the front doors and into their chaos. The security guard was trying to explain that the venue was closed for renovations, but no one was listening. Who's in charge here? Uncle Robert demanded. We need to speak with the owner immediately. You are, I said calmly. They all turned, falling silent as they saw me standing there. Emma. William's jaw dropped. What are you doing here? I work here, I said simply. In fact, I own here. As I explained to Aunt Catherine yesterday. It's true then. Sophia whispered. You really bought the Crystal Ballroom? Among other things. I gestured to the building next door, another of my properties. And that one. And most of this block, actually. They stared at me, then at the buildings, their worldview visibly crumbling. But you're poor, William sputtered. You manage properties for a living. I own properties for a living, I corrected him. Quite a few of them. That lowly job you all mocked? It was just a cover for my real estate empire. Empire. Aunt Catherine's voice was faint. Would you like a tour? I offered. See what the poor cousin has built while you were all busy maintaining appearances? They followed me inside like dazed sheep, their designer shoes clicking on the marble floors. I showed them everything. The planned renovations, the community spaces, the restored architectural details. But where will we hold our gala? Sophia wailed. You won't, I said firmly. The Crystal Ballroom is returning to its original purpose. A space that brings people together, not keeps them apart. You're doing this to punish us, Uncle Robert accused. No, I turned to face them. I'm doing this because 10 years ago when I lost my parents and needed family, you showed me exactly who you were. Now I'm showing you exactly who I am. And who is that? Aunt Catherine asked stiffly. Someone who built something real while you were all playing pretend. Someone who learned that true worth isn't about who you exclude but what you create. Grandmother stepped forward then, her voice carrying across the marble floors. She's a Harrison who actually deserves the name. One by one they left, their perfectly crafted world shattered. Only Sophia lingered, looking around with new eyes. I never knew, she said quietly. All these years we thought. You thought what you were taught to think, I replied. That money and status were the same thing. That excluding others made you special. She nodded slowly. What happens now? Now. I smiled. Now we build something better. The Crystal Ballroom reopened 6 months later. The renovation preserved its grandeur while making it accessible to all. Where once it hosted only elite events, now it welcomed everything from charity fundraisers to community art shows to local business launches. My family, they adapted slowly. Uncle Robert's hedge fund failed, forcing him to finally face reality. Aunt Catherine started volunteering at one of the community programs hosted in the ballroom, partly to save face but maybe also to learn. Sophia joined my company as an intern, starting from the bottom to understand real business. The Harrison name still carried weight in the city, but for new reasons. Not because of inherited status but because of what we were building. Spaces that united rather than divided, success measured by what we gave rather than what we kept. A year after the cancelled gala, I hosted my own event at the Crystal Ballroom. Not a charity gala for show, but a genuine community celebration. Looking around at the diverse crowd, local artists mingling with business leaders, students showcasing their work alongside established professionals, I knew Dad would have been proud. Grandmother found me by the grand staircase, where a plaque honored my parents' memory. Your father always said buildings should bring people together, she reminded me. He'd love what you've done here. I watched Sophia giving tours to guests, genuinely excited about the venue's history and future. Saw Aunt Catherine actually smiling as she talked with a local artist. Even Uncle Robert had shown up, humbler but maybe better for it. You know what the best revenge is, Gran? I asked. He squeezed my hand. Creating something they can't ignore? Creating something better than they could imagine, I corrected. Something that makes their exclusivity look as empty as it always was. The crystal ballroom shone that night, its chandeliers casting light on a new kind of gathering. Not one based on who could be kept out but on who could be brought together. Sometimes the poor cousin becomes the one they all must answer to. Sometimes the venue they deem too good for you becomes the symbol of everything they got wrong. And sometimes, just sometimes, the best way to prove your worth isn't by excluding others, but by creating space for everyone to shine. The Harrison name lived on, but its meaning had changed. Not because of who we kept out, but because of what we built together. And that was a legacy worth more than all their old money combined.